Congressman Franklin, thank you for participating in our 2024 WhistleStop Candidate Hobnob. By purchasing a video interview, you have allowed our chamber to educate the citizens of Polk County about the upcoming election and the issues and candidates on the ballot. Thank you. Since your campaign has purchased this video interview, the Florida Division of Elections does require you to disclose that fact with the following statement.
Well, actually, yes, this is a campaign event. It is paid for with funds by Scott Franklin for Congress to support my reelection for Florida District 18.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So we will get started with the first question. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm a 46-year now resident of Polk County. I'm married to Amy. We've been married coming up on 34 years in November. We have 3 adult kids. They're 25, 28, and 30. They're all scattered to the winds now. One is in DC in communications, not having to do with the government. Another is a wildland firefighter out in Oregon. And I have a daughter who's a school teacher in Colorado. So they're all scattered out. I graduated from Lakeland High School in 1982, went to the U.S. Naval Academy from there, and then got to do a lifelong dream, which was to fly jets in the Navy off aircraft carriers. So I did that for 14 years on active duty, and then another 12 years in the reserves. During that time, I was in the first Gulf War. I was in Bosnia in 1995 and Kosovo again in 1998 and then back in Iraq in 99. So a lot of time was spent in the Middle East and then hot spots around different places in the world. But left active duty in 2000, came back to Lakeland and was in the insurance business. I ended up was CEO and ran Lanier Upshaw Insurance based in Lakeland, but we had offices in Winter Haven and Lake Wales and other places along the way. I did that for 20 years. And along the way, got involved with local politics and ran for the Lakeland City Commission in 2017 and served a term as a Lakeland City Commissioner before resigning that to run for Congress in 2020. So it's a little bit of my the professional background. I'm now serving in my second term in Congress. And the first term, I was on the House Oversight Committee as well as the House Armed Services Committee, and then made the transition this term to the House Appropriations Committee. And I learned pretty early on that, a lot of Congress is talking about things and making noise, but appropriations is where things really happen. It's where the money gets doled out to the different needs and across the different communities. So I've really enjoyed the work on appropriations this time. And theoretically, I have hobbies. As I was thinking back on what I used to enjoy doing, I love golf. Though my game's terrible now, I never get to play. I used to do a lot of mountain climbing and then climb mountains all over the world. And unfortunately, these days, about the only thing I'm climbing is Capitol Hill. And I used to do a lot of flying, too. Even after I left the Navy, I still flew. I did some for business, some for pleasure. But the only thing I'm doing now is going back and forth to D.C. on American Airlines each week. But
that's funny.
Pretty much a full-time gig doing this congressional thing now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service and thank you for answering that question. We'll move on to the next one. What is the biggest opportunity for your district in this next legislative session?
Well, there's a lot of opportunities. I had alluded to being on the Appropriations Committee, and I am thrilled with the way the districts were redesigned for this term. This is my first term representing the new Florida 18. And it's an inland rural district that starts with Polk County, goes all the way down to the Everglades. And traditionally, our congressional districts, most of them started on the coastline and worked inward. And the smaller communities, in my view, would tend often to get overlooked and neglected, didn't get the attention they deserve. We now have a district that is built out of primarily smaller communities. And, Winter Haven is certainly one of those. A big eye opener for me was learning how much is available to communities out there in the form of resources and grants and different things like that, that a lot of times the smaller communities aren't able to take advantage of. They don't have the staffs to do that, or they're not aware of them. So we have a tremendous opportunity to build on what we've already been doing in this term to try to really get our fair share of those federal resources and bring them back home to the local districts. I'm really excited about that, really continuing that appropriations work.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Next question. What are your top 2 or 3 priorities if elected?
Just two or three. Well, I think I kind of have to split those up really, and I'm not trying to cheat on you and give more than two or three, but
No worries.
there are local priorities that are very important to me, but then there's also a federal focus. I would say locally, it's continuing to do the best constituent casework we can possibly do. And I was unaware until getting into this job, all the types of things that a local congressional office can do to help our constituents. We do a tremendous amount of work with veterans, claims on veterans issues, Social Security, IRS, you name it, anything that where people are having trouble with the government, we have a world-class team. And I've got some tenure on our team that goes back long before my term here. We have some who have been serving in the area all the way back to Congressman Adam Putnam, I think maybe even Charles Kennedy. We still have some staffers there. So a lot of experience. I look forward to continuing that. It's a high priority. We want to continue to get grants to our local communities, the counties and municipalities. In fact, just this morning, we hosted a workshop, a symposium with FEMA for the Federal Emergency Management Agency with all the different counties in the district to inform them of the types of grants and monies that they can receive from FEMA, how to fill out those, best practices on how to get yours acknowledged and rewarded. So we want to continue on the grants. And then I also have an opportunity to do community project funding where each year across our district, I'm allowed to, it can vary by year, but it's been about a dozen, 12 to 14 different projects that we will specifically seek federal funding for. And I've had tremendous success so far in getting a lot of those for communities, not only for Winter Haven, but for others in Polk County and throughout our district to enable things like, infrastructure grants, whether it's roads or water or sewer infrastructure, things like that. There's just, more needs than we have resources for. So I want to continue to work on those. And then on a national level, we've got a lot of work to do to try to continue to rebuild our economy coming back out of COVID. Our spending, in my view, has been really out of control, which has led a lot to the excessive inflation that we face. So we got to get the economy working better. And, if people look at the stock market, we're having all-time highs in the stock market. That's not trickling down to all of our citizens. Not everyone's invested in the stock market every day. I hear from a lot of working families that, look, I'm just trying to pay the car insurance and put food on the table. I'd love to be able to participate in the stock market, but I can't. So we've got to make this economy work for everybody, and we've got to provide better jobs. We've recovered a lot of the jobs that we lost during COVID. But unfortunately, now what we're seeing is more and more people having to work 2, 3, and sometimes even 4 jobs to make ends meet. I'd rather have everyone working one job that can pay their bills and sustain their family. So we want to improve that. We've got to get our energy independence back again. We've given that away. We got to get gas prices down. We got to get interest rates down. We've got to continue to bring inflation under control. And as a former military person who served on armed services, we've got to continue to rebuild our military. We spent a lot of time in 20 years over in the Middle East focused on anti-terrorism, and that's a need, and it hasn't gone away. But at the same time, we've allowed a lot of our resources to degrade. We've got to replace those, and we need to retailor our fight to be prepared, at least to stand up to China. And the best way we can avoid wars is to have I'm an old Teddy Roosevelt fan, speak softly and carry a big stick. But the way to avoid wars is to make sure that the rest of our potential adversaries out there know that we have the capability to fight and we're willing to if necessary. So those would be my kind of national and local priorities.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. What do you consider the biggest challenge of the position you're running for?
Well, one is educating a lot of people on how their government works. In our weekly newsletter, we have a section called Civics with Scott, but I'm amazed at how many people still will stop me at Publix and ask, how are things going up in Tallahassee? So there's a basic misunderstanding on how government works and how it should function, and really what we're capable of doing with the House and the Senate and the White House and how all those factors play out. I still often will point people back to the little cartoon I saw as a kid on "I'm Just a Bill," from Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, I
And
know exactly what you're talking about.
it's very complicated to get things passed into law. And a lot of that, I think, it can be frustrating for people. But I think if they really understood what the founding fathers intended, I think they purposefully threw a little sand in the gears to try to make it difficult to pass laws, because they don't want us to swing from one wild extreme to another every few years. So it's a difficult process to get things put into law. So it's tempering expectations people have of what is capable of getting accomplished. And then also, tragically, what we witnessed over this past weekend was where things go when the political rhetoric gets to a point where some people feel like they've got to take matters into their own hands and resort to violence. We've got to bring, it's become cliche now. Everyone's talking about it, about bringing the temperature down in the country, but we have to get back to that. We've got to be more civil. I'm not naive enough to think that we're going to have this group unity and everyone's going to do a kumbaya. We're all going to agree 100% on things. That avid political discourse is a part of our DNA as a country. We need to continue to do that. We've got to be able to go into the marketplace of ideas and fight those ideas out, argue for what we want, but reach consensus and compromise in order to get things done. And I think the broader American public is just tired of not seeing enough results out of Congress, and I agree with them. So it's a matter of managing those expectations and informing people of what we can get done, and then just sitting down and getting it done.
Right. Well, thank you for answering. I have only one more question for you, and that is, why should voters choose you over the other candidates?
All right. So I am fortunate in this election cycle that I don't have a Republican primary opponent. I am the Republican nominee for the election in November. There are two candidates filed to run, two Democrats who will, I guess, have their primary in August, and then I will face whoever comes out of that primary. As far as that goes, I don't know. I've not had any opportunity to meet or speak with my potential opponent in November. I would say, and I learned this from being on the city commission before in Lakeland, I have tremendous respect and admiration for anyone who's willing to put their name on the ballot. It's a tough world out there politically. It's mean, social media. It's not a place for anyone thin-skinned. So I applaud anyone who's willing to do that. I will say, with respect to at least what I know of my potential opponents so far, one is from Sarasota and doesn't live in the district. And I would just question that person's real understanding of what the real needs are for our district. And, the other, at least from what I can understand, doesn't have the business background that I have, hasn't served in the military, doesn't have direct government experience. So, so that's, to not vote for someone else is not reason to vote for another person. I would say the reason I would suggest that I'm qualified for this job is, one, I've been in it now for 4 years. It takes a while to start understanding how the process works. And I am part of a very influential and powerful committee on the House Appropriations Committee. And that's a big deal for Polk County. As far as I can understand, and then looking back in my research, I don't think we've ever had an appropriator in the House from Polk County. That allows me to have tremendous leverage and do things and help out our constituents. But I also think, going back to my military background, we live in a dangerous world now. People will talk about how it feels like it's a world that's on fire. I've got military experience. I understand how that works. I know what things look like. I grew up in the Ronald Reagan military buildup years where we won the Cold War, and I know how to do that. I've seen our military work well. I know what it's going to take to get us back there again. And I also have a good understanding of foreign policy and understanding these foreign cultures. I've had a chance over my military career and time since to visit more than 80 different countries in my capacity now in Congress. I've met with kings and queens and presidents of other nations and worked with members of the EU, the Secretary General there. And so I'm ready to do the job. I'm already in the job. So I would say that, that would be an advantage. And then also, having been a business owner, I know what it's like to sign both the front and the back side of a paycheck. I know what it's like when the economy gets tough and you've got to make tough decisions. Unfortunately, our federal government for too long hasn't made those tough decisions. At our whether it's across our tables at home or in our businesses or in our local government or state government, we're all required to figure out how to live within our means and balance our budget. The federal government hasn't for decades now even really made a serious attempt to do that. And we've got to restore fiscal responsibility to the government. I worry for my children who are now trying to strike out as adults and build their lives. How do they afford a down payment for a house? How do they, thankfully they worked and did other means and they don't carry college debt, but a lot of folks do. And it's so hard to get started on that ladder to try to build a life for yourself in the current climate. And I think just with my business background, my time that I've already spent in government and military, that I have the skills to be effective on day one.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Congressman Franklin, for sharing with me and taking the time.
Thank you.